Good morning. We have a couple of meetings that are in process, so you notice the front row there's a lack of, well, thank goodness Lynn's here. That's the only smart one on that row anyway. No, I said just an important meeting. Nothing's as important as this meeting. By the way, that's the approved vehicle for this room. No open cups, no food. It's been that way forever. This is not new and different. Mr. Earhart's responsible for that, and so if you don't like it, tell him. Okay. Well, he got his meeting over with quick. You can tell he's got a bill he wants on Monday. Oh. I'm worried about you keeping your place. Okay, y'all bow with me. Gracious Heavenly Father, again we're asking you to forgive us of our sins. As much as we appreciated yesterday, boy, today sure looks good. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for the blessing of life. Lead us, guide us, let us do things that please you. Forgive us when we don't. And thank you for the grace that you always give. Ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. I remember you. Come on down.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to present House Bill HB 780. It is number 13 on page 1. HB 780 is written to clarify the definition portion of a Georgia code so that a distinction is made between a diagnostic clinical laboratory and a non-diagnostic laboratory. Thank you, and I will answer any questions.
No questions, thank you. This is the third time you've been here, right?
Yes, sir.
You don't have to come back anymore on this bill.
Thank you.
That's not going to apply to all the rest of you. You're going to have to keep coming back. Ms. Clark.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring for your consideration House Bill 588. And our Walgreens and big box pharmacies at this time have an electronic logging system, and our grocery stores and independent pharmacists use a paper log. This bill calls for an electronic logging system across the board for pseudoephedrine sales, such as your Claritin D and your Allegra D. It'd be free of charge to our pharmacies, and it will be the same system across the board. And this bill is supported by our Attorney General, the Sheriff's Association, the Georgia Drugs and Narcotics, and our local police departments and grocery store pharmacies. And I ask for your consideration on this bill.
Mr. Parrish.
Representative, I'm in agreement with the bill that you have, but as we've discussed, my concern would be if there's a cost to the local shopkeepers or the stores or whatever, and you tell me there's not, but there's nothing in the bill that says there can't be charges later, like transaction fees and maintenance of the software and this sort of thing. But you have assured me that before this bill, if it becomes law, it'll have that in there, right?
Chairman Parrish, you not only have my word, but you have the word of our Chairman of Health and Human Services. So that will be taken care of, and I have checked with our president of the pharmacies, and he states that there is no transaction fee for those big box pharmacies now. And our surrounding states, all of our surrounding states have it, and there is not a transaction fee.
We just want to make sure that doesn't occur.
Sir,
Thank
it
you.
will be taken care of.
Ms. Cooper, there's been a lot of talk about this bill. When do you have another committee?
Tuesday, sir.
Can you fix it so it doesn't have to be fixed on the floor or later on by another group across the hall? I want everybody on the same page, and I am getting a lot of
If that's what the chairman would like, I'll be glad to do it, and then I'll ask it whenever the proper time is that you send the bill back to the Health and Human Services Committee.
Ms. Clark, I think that to make sure that the bill gets through without any
Question.
and again, I'd like to have everybody on the same page with this thing. And so, Madam Chair, if you would, now would be the appropriate time. Let's just go ahead and.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I request that you remove House Bill 588 and return it to the Health and Human Services Committee.
Okay. We've got that request, and I'm going to grant that, and then y'all work this thing out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Mr. Perkle. Yes. You hadn't been here before either, have you?
No, sir, I have not.
Which committee chair would let you have a bill out?
Sir?
You got about 30 seconds. Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for considering House Bill 876. It is the third one on page 1 under open rule, House Bill 876. This bill provides for the Department of Agriculture to issue annual livestock dealer and operator licenses for a nominal fee. It changes surety requirements to align with industry standards and publishes a list of licensed dealers to ensure livestock producers have access to legitimate dealers. Thank you for your consideration, and I will entertain questions.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Perkle?
I'm a farmer, Mr. Chairman,
You know,
and a livestock producer.
You did pretty good on your time, too.
Thank you, sir.
Just want to let it out there that he might know a little bit about what he's talking about on this one, just to let y'all know.
Thank you, sir.
I got some questions. Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, on page 5 of your bill, line 147, looks like we're striking a requirement for bonds and as far as amounts are concerned, and turning it back over to somebody else to decide how much a bond should be versus it being in the code. Is that what we're doing?
Thank you for noticing that, Mr. Chairman. This provision does allow for a change in the way we look at surety. Currently, it's an I should say archaic method of determining the surety requirements for the dealers. The industry standard, the gold standard, is the USDA's packers and stockyards, and that's what everyone really goes by. It's the industry standard throughout the industry, and that's really a departmental change for this legislation.
So how are we going to decide how much a bond should be for these people?
It's determined by the USDA stockers and packers. So we'll have a memorandum of understanding with the USDA on that. It's normally
some kind of
determined
standard table or something. A table.
They do issue one. It's generally based on 2 days worth of business. Is the way the USDA calculates that.
Madam Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, under line 21, there's a definition of broker which is synonymous with dealer, but that language is struck, and then we strike the term broker from the remainder of the bill. Is this because we will no longer recognize broker as a term of art, or is it because there are no brokers who operate under this field?
The dealer will be is a generic name that would include the formerly used broker term.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Y'all don't have to be nice to him. Eat him up. I don't care. No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Jones.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 219 moves condominium pools from the current list of public pools that are regulated by state or county DPH to the list of private pools, which are self-regulated by the property owner. Be happy to take any questions.
Have you got a bill on today?
Yes, sir.
Let's see, there's 180 of us. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And I said we weren't going to do but 125 bills.
Been working on this one for 2 years, Mr. Chairman.
Well.
And you are fully aware of that, sir.
You know why I've got this job?
Yes, sir. Because you're good at what you do.
Because my heart's not very soft.
This is important for private property owners.
Mr. Fleming. Wave, okay. Ms. Cooper.
Chairman, I certainly have no influence on how you decide about the bill, but if you can, could you give him a little credit for his short version and presentation today?
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you for your favorable consideration.
Mr. Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you for your consideration House Bill 697 on unsolicited merchandise and protecting our citizens and making sure they have an affirmative assent before being liable for such merchandise. Before I stand for questions, I would like to point out, we all know every day is a good day to thank our men and women who've served. And today in the United States Marine Corps history, on February the 4th, 1868, the Marines answered their call to duty.
Good try, Mr. Kirby.
So we appreciate everything you did, sir. Any questions?
I wasn't there in 1868. I feel like it when I'm up here in front of y'all, but I wasn't.
Thank you, sir.
No questions. Ms. Quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I bring you HB 405, which is the fourth down under modified open rule. This bill would supply a definition of antenuptial agreement, also known as prenups, which does not currently exist in code. It would require that prenuptial agreements be in writing and executed in the presence of two witnesses, one of whom must be a notary public. This would provide some certainty for bench and bar in this area and eliminate some current confusion in the case law, whereby the appellate courts have distinguished between agreements in contemplation of marriage and agreements in contemplation of divorce and created a difference in that area. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Ms. Quick? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you HB 538. It's at the top of the page under open rule. This is the dog bite bill that would allow for a victim of a dog bite treating physician to contact a veterinarian and ask for the vaccination records of that dog to determine the best course of care. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
Ms. Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask for House Bill 483. It's the fifth one down under modified open rule. This is to establish the native to Georgia, unique to Georgia, shoal bass as an official symbol of our state so that we can promote tourism and economic development.
Go ahead and tell them about the three rivers down there. Let them know that this fish isn't everywhere.
I couldn't hear you. I apologize. Well, Three Rivers. It's the Flint, Chattahoochee, and the Ocmulgee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. On first page, second bill down under Open Rule, HB 741, this bill seeks to reset the start times for the term of court of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. Basically, they're requesting a readjustment in conjunction with, or something that's a little bit more congruent with the school year. Apparently, the term of court is generally set to tell you when the decisions has to be made by the court. And as it stands right now, the time period and the deadlines falls right before, or during, or after the times when the staff's children are out of school. So it's putting a little stress on their schedule to get all the work done. So the Supreme Court and the AOC has requested that we moved up the term approximately 4 weeks in one term and 2 weeks in the remaining terms.
Any questions for Mr. Pack? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Harrell.
Mr. Chairman, if I could move at the author's request to send House Bill 579 back to committee.
All right, got moved and second. Everybody okay with that? Mr. McCall has requested that one be sent back. Any opposed? Okay. All right. Members of the committee, Mr. Rogers. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one bill, if I can find it.
193.
193, I'm sorry. House Bill 193 is the Life Insurance Consumer Disclosure Model Act. We've been working on this, and all it simply does is protect the agent from any retaliation from the insurance company. It was a 3-page bill or 3.5 page. Now it's only a 1-page bill, so I think it's been fixed. So.
Okay. Mr. Earhart.
Now that you're able assistant and the majority leader know to check with you when you need a bill on the rules calendar, I think we can now ask for this legislation. House Bill 775.
Boy, so that's a real good bill.
I tend to agree, Mr. Chairman. This is an optometric measure, and the continuum of those is not one of those that's controversial. This will protect our current statute with respect to not allowing those who are out of state to prescribe optometric services over the internet app by measuring your shoe size. So I'd ask your favorable consideration.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Earhart? Mr. Golick has questions.
Just a very brief one, Mr. Chairman. A friendly question. How is it that this individual, I think there's a particular individual, I think he's in Tennessee, and he's obviously got licenses in different states, and he's, using technology to have people who are not trained professionals take measurements and do prescriptions electronically as opposed to him being there, which I know is the impetus for the bill. How is it that and these people are, he's an optometrist, right?
The actual licensee that's doing it is an ophthalmologist, which has a license in Georgia, but he lives in Tennessee.
I just wonder, and it's not necessarily a question.
No, I understand.
I'm expecting an answer right now, but I just wonder how it is that the board can look at this, see this licensee and what he's doing, and not have a problem with that. Have they addressed that just anywhere along the way?
I'm not aware of that. That's a great question, and I would assume that board is probably going to look into this type of thing. I will state, too, that this has a complete exception for the telemedicine that's out there that is performed under protocols, under state statutory advisement and that type of thing. This is only for these types of individuals. It's been metaphorically compared to if you went up to the blood pressure cuff at Walmart put your arm in there and it popped out a prescription, you could take it to the counter. That's really not where we want to go with our public health and safety.
Well, thank you for the bill.
Mr. Willard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked for the House Bill 759, and this came to me through the Credit Union Association of Georgia. They do much the same type work, of course, the banks do. This is an older law that recognized that in banks' case, the drafting of notes and security instruments, for notes, etc., would not constitute the practice of law. Of course, they do that in all the banks. And has not addressed the same type thing as far as credit unions, so we changed the definition from just saying banks to also financial institutions as defined in the current law, which includes banks, savings and loans, and credit unions.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooper?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask for the lactation consultant bill again. That's House Bill 649 under modified open rule. And I would also like to put my name by House Bill 780. This takes care of over-regulation, and this time it's Georgia putting extra unnecessary regulations on Georgia companies. Thank you.
Mr. Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask again for House Bill 767, and there's an amendment on the desk. This was the legislation I had talked about yesterday that adds utility vehicles and such to the safety requirements that people have to slow down or get into the other lane when they're passing them. Try to save a few lives.
What does the amendment do?
The amendment, Mr. Chairman, because there was two code sections that dealt with this. You had the emergency vehicles in one, and you had the garbage trucks that was added last year in a different code section. We had to change this around so that we put it sort of made uniformity in this. This falls under the emergency vehicles, and what we've done in the amendment is we've dropped the fine on these to no more than $250, where the emergency vehicles and law enforcement is less than $5 or less. And by deleting the word sanitation, that leaves sanitation trucks in their own specific code section. Something near and dear to Mr. Harrell's heart.
Well, he's up here prodding me as we talk. I tell you what, let's do. Let's go ahead and vote on the amendment, and it's just to approve the amendment to go on the floor. The floor is where this amendment will be. You have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, the amendment has been approved to go on the floor. Mr. Dixon?
Just wanted to put my name beside House Bill 759, please.
Anyone else? Okay. We're going to set the calendar. This is for Monday. This is Monday's calendar. Under modified open, HB 649. Any opposed? So, under a modified open, HB 780. Any opposed? So, under modified open, HB 759. Any opposed? Under modified open, HB 775. Move. Is anybody silly enough to oppose that? Okay. Under modified structure, HB 737. Any opposed? So, under modified structure, HB 767. And as we haven't amended, but is taking an amendment with it. Anybody move on that? Move. Anybody opposed to that? How many is that? 6? We're done.